Here with High-Level Conversations and the You're Not Done Yet podcast, and we have a special guest, Shelby Green. Before the break, we were just talking about basically what are some of the funding sources that our leaders in our county can actually use, and what type of projects would Shelby Green, if elected as our city commissioner, be able to do with that, I guess, those funds. And could you explain again what we're talking about there? I'm sorry.
Yeah, thanks, James. Well, there are a lot of different funding sources here. I think the biggest funding source is Blueprint. So our city and our county have an intergovernmental agency called Blueprint, and Blueprint is funded by our penny sales tax. And in the past, we have been able to use Blueprint funding for Cascades Park and also FAMU Way Trail and a lot of green spaces and public infrastructure projects here in Tallahassee and Leon County. But recently, we've also seen Blueprint funding used for stadium upgrades for FSU. So that's been like a controversial vote and also like a divisive conversation in our community. Partially, some people feel that public dollars should not be used for stadium upgrades. That was not the original intent of the penny sales tax or the Blueprint funds. Other parts of the community say FSU is an economic powerhouse. If we do not fund them, then we will not receive any economic development or any economic returns from funding them.
Let me get this right. So about how much money of that was devoted to the stadium funding?
Overall, about $27 million.
And that went to FSU, but it also went to FAMU's football stadium as well, correct?
So, yeah, there have been 3 stadiums funded. TCC received $1 million, FAMU $10 million, and FSU about $27 million.
Okay. That makes me mad as a taxpayer. I'm just going to be honest with you.
Because I'm like, what?
Because I know my tuition dollars went to those schools. Nope. I've gone to FAMU and FSU.
Yeah.
Where would we... if given the opportunity, if you were commissioner back then, what would you have done with that funding?
With the FSU vote, I would have voted against it, but I also would have argued, if I saw that the vote was still going to be a yes, I would have argued for not the full funding amount, maybe half of that.
Yes.
And also a stronger community benefit agreement.
Yeah.
As a resident right now, I can hardly gain access to FSU. As an alumni, I can't even go to the library and get the same resources I had as a student. If I wanted to rent out space at the stadium, I cannot do that at a subsidized or discounted rate. So I kind of think about, like, how if you go to Disney and you get a subsidized rate or, a cheaper ticket because you're a Florida resident. The same thing should happen here in Tallahassee. If you are a resident of Tallahassee or Leon County, you should have access to amenities from FSU or FAMU. I think as a resident here, you have more access to FAMU,
yes,
but not as much to FSU. I should be able to go to FSU, go to their gym, and not have to pay anything.
Right.
I should be able to audit a class and not have to pay anything.
Right.
I should be able to, if I was a student here, I should be able to apply for a scholarship fund to prevent cancellation of my schedule. So there needs to be more of a alignment between the private interest. Private interest at the time was FSU and wanting to get stadium upgrades. The commissioner should have seen, okay, well, if we're going to give you $27 million or even $10 million, how can we make sure the public is getting as much benefit from that as possible? We have students here, children here and young adults here who should have access to FSU, who should be able to go there and learn and not have to worry about being able to afford to pay once they graduate. So I think there needs to be a scholarship program. I think there needs to be funding sources for low-income people to get access to FSU. I think there just needs to be FSU opening itself up to the community, because if we're opening up our pocketbook or our wallet to FSU should be doing the same thing in return.
Yeah, because I wanted to say, FAMU alum here on the mic. So just thinking about what you said, for one, they gave close to $20 million to a stadium, right? So if we're thinking about FSU having economic impact on us, so FAMU homecoming don't bring the city out every year. You know, we book our hotel rooms in advance. You know what I mean? Like, and like you said, FAMU makes sure that we have access to that university.
Yes.
It's not one of those campuses where, you know, you get profiled just for walking around. Like, you have the chance to explore that. So I'm with you. If I'm opening up all of this money, what is the community getting out of it, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, and FAMU is centered on that family, like, oriented type of thing, you know?
My thing is, why would you make the folks in the community that already have a very, very steady rate of income even richer when you have a lot of poverty in this community?
On the other side, yeah.
A lot of homelessness, and then you also have a lot of businesses. I'm not sure if we want to jump into that, but one of the things that just from my perspective, being a Black-owned business, it's a struggle to get into business. And I'm thinking, you know, that's money that could have been spent on helping different people start their own businesses and helping the community get rid of the homeless population. That not get rid of, but to you know, provide housing and food and things of necessity.
But it's crazy that we never would have known about that until Shelby said something. You know, you never would have known about it unless you asked about it. That's not something that was publicized or whatever the case may be. But I feel like in the position, if given the opportunity, we know that you will, those are things that, as you know, the new generation coming up, we want to know things like that.
Yeah, I think that's a really big issue, though. Like, not a lot of people know what's actually going on with their local government and how the local government is spending their money.
Yeah.
Like, the city commission does not do a good job at publishing meetings in a timely rate, and then we have a local newspaper that is not able to publish everything. So there's this really big information gap, and we have news platforms that try to fill it, but their intent is not to provide information. It is to sway voters into one direction or another, or to manipulate their behavior.
Yeah.
So, like, because we have this missing information gap that was caused by our local government, we have people who are not engaged like they should be. We have people who try to take advantage of that gap by manipulating people and information. And then we have people who are just like, okay, well, I don't want to know it all.
Yeah, just enough to, like, you know, spoon feed me a little bit. Yeah.
So it's just like, one of the things I would really like to see is just the city commission do a better job of sharing information, sharing resources. We need to share what we know and what we have so that residents can get access to what they need. One example is during the pandemic, the city received $46 million in COVID relief funds for a quote-unquote equitable economic recovery.
Yeah.
Almost $30 million of that went towards the city recovering what they lost during the pandemic. And not to say that the city should not recover some of the funds that they lost, but what about the people who have lost everything?
Yeah.
People who have lost their housing, lost businesses, lost utilities, you know, are now struggling with debt.
Yeah.
So we need a government. And they didn't even vocalize that they received $46 million.
And that's what I'm saying. And so